Good afternoon, this is Jeff with Sewer Tech Northwest. We're at 4810 Southeast 49th Avenue here in Portland, located in the crawl space. We've got you've actually got a myriad of cleanouts down here. We're going through a little 2-inch cleanout. But you've got one on the 3-inch stub here. It's just the cap is a pain to get out, and one on the cast iron. We're going to check the overall condition and serviceability of the sanitary sewer line. Now my camera may have just gone from one side to the other there. There we go. And we're dropping into 4-inch cast iron pipe. Only a very small amount of this thing is actually updated ABS. And water's running, off we go. We certainly have a belly in the line here in the crawl space. The combination of standing water and cast iron, which has a fairly rough texture to the inside of it, is not my favorite combo. Standing water always slows things down, if not stops them to an extent. But then you couple that with rough pipe walls that can grab onto that debris. It's just it's a recipe for blockages to occur, especially if you have a larger household. Now, you put one person in here, an adult, and it's probably not going to be the end of the world, but that's a pretty good sized belly you've got there. And we'll get a better view of that. I do have 2 fixtures running right now, so we'll see how that looks on the way out when the line's fully drained. And it looks like we've got a ridge forming in the flow line. We'll get a nicer view of that when the line's drained out. But when you start getting really heavy pitting and stuff like that, that often indicates you've got pinholes in the flow line everywhere, and it causes the rust to build up. We'll see how it looks when it drains out. That's kind of how it's looking right now. Alright, and there's our main connection at 63 feet. If I didn't mention it, we're in 6-inch concrete right now. Alright, we're going to pull back to the transition joint. We're going to locate there just to see if any concrete pipe is on property or not. Then we'll drain everything off. Most, if not all, the concrete pipe will be city responsibility. I just want to see if any of it is in the homeowners or not. And it's all draining well. It's just old. At least the concrete pipe, that's what I'm referring to right now anyway. Alright, we're going to go locate right here and see where we are. Alright, I'm picking the transition up. The line goes out and terminates on 49th. In this case, there may be a little tiny bit of concrete pipe on property. My locate right now is coming in just barely prior to the face of the curb. So that, if I were to guesstimate, you probably have about a foot of concrete pipe on property, approximately. Anyway, that flow line, if you see all those nodules that are forming there, if you've ever been in the basement of an old home and you've seen the big cast iron pipe coming out of the ceiling and going down into the basement floor, you'll get rust drip marks going down the side. What you are seeing right now is the reverse of that. That's what it looks like from the inside of the pipe. Those nodules form when the cast iron gets pinholes. Rust starts to form. The rust often is kind of a scab layer that builds up over the top of it, but that right there is the beginning stages. What comes next is the bottom of the pipe rots out. So right now, if you were to go run a hydrojetter through here, for instance, you would probably open up, they may not be gigantic holes, but you would start uncovering holes underneath all that. So at this juncture, the line is about reached the end of its lifespan. It's still functioning as far as flow goes, but from a longevity, structural integrity standpoint, it's reaching the end of its lifespan. And with the advent of epoxy liners, which are trenchless, the last thing I want to see anyone do is let the line wear out so badly that it opens up to the ground, starts to suck dirt through it, and you end up with a line that starts settling, and you lose the ability to be able to do a trenchless repair. Anyway, that's my 2 cents on it. It's, you know, it hasn't opened up wide like your average rot, but the entire line looks this way, unfortunately. Alrighty, I'm doing my darndest to locate. I've got a lot of plants in and around where I'm locating here. I'm getting around 5 feet deep there. At the street curb again, I'm dealing with a car parked right over where I was trying to locate. Getting around 6 feet deep there. However, this is not a line where I would, unless there's something about it that can't be done, I would recommend looking into an epoxy liner for this one. The slope and grade is still good. This would should be a nice candidate for an epoxy liner, which avoids digging. In most cases anyway. Every now and then you get a scenario where a clean out has to be added in, but from the looks of it, this looks like a pretty good setup. Now the part that you unfortunately cannot do a liner on is the part of the line that's bellied. And sometimes you can line these things as long as they can cure the epoxy. That's kind of the unknown, is whether or not the epoxy will cure properly in the standing water. You would obviously improve flow because your pipe walls would be as smooth as glass, but when you get a long length like that, it can be difficult to heat cure the epoxy. So the part that's bellied out, unfortunately, generally, if you're trying to get the grade corrected anyway, requires the good old-fashioned type repair. But if you can put an epoxy liner through here, you would definitely improve flow. It's not going to fix the standing water. It will displace a portion of it, though. Those liners have a little bit of thickness to them. You know, let's say they're a 1/4 inch thick. It's going to displace about that much water. So, you know, if it can be done, it's an option worth looking into. It won't be perfectly graded, but you will be light years ahead of where you are right now, just taking the roughness factor out of the equation. Alright, so right now we're sitting about 5 feet outside the foundation, only about 3 foot 4 inches deep here. So the standing water does persist out to the exterior of the home. So what I would do in this case, I'm going to pull back here and see what kind of standing water we're dealing with. You know, if it's hovering around the 1/4 inch mark, I think it's worth, in this case, consulting a liner company to see if this can be epoxy lined. Now, after 13 years at NAS, you start getting into 1 inch of standing water here, unfortunately. And this is under the house. This is a really tricky spot to locate for me. I'm just not set up for interior stuff. But that's a sizable belly there. So as long as they can cure the epoxy properly in that minor, you know, around 1/4 inch standing water, I don't have any issues with you know, retaining a little bit of that, because the smoothness of those liners makes that standing water almost entirely insignificant. The interior belly there is a different story. You've got about 2 inches of standing water in that belly. That's not one you want to have. Whether it's cast iron or plastic or what have you, it's just not. With a larger household in here, that's a spot where anything you flush down this line is going to get hung up in that belly. You're just depending upon the rate of disintegration of all your solids in conjunction with other water flow to convey things along. It's not the kind of situation where you're going to flush the toilet and stuff's going to clear that area. It's going to get hung up in there. So, because of the condition of the line here, the gradation issues, and the condition of the cast iron in general, I'm recommending an update end-to-end on this, interior and exterior. If for some reason it's not updated now, I would certainly be budgeting to do that in the near future, especially if you want to be able to take advantage of a liner for the outside part of the house. You don't want to let this thing completely turn into Swiss cheese and open up to the ground completely. So I would be trying to get that done the next few years, ideally. Make sure you rescope after any repairs are done to check the work.